Hey guys, my name is Eric Peng and I'm the founder of Daily Fantasy Nerd. We're going to do a walkthrough of today's analysis and taking a look at Daily Fantasy Nerd's stats and tools so you can understand how I go about creating my lineup. Let's get started. We'll take a look at the Vegas odds first. Today, the over-unders, high scoring games you might want to target are Suns versus Kings and Timberwolves versus Washington. The Dallas Golden State Warriors game can be a good target too, but you have to be a little bit concerned about the blowout factor here. So in games like this, I would probably avoid the top costing stars and maybe go for some of the more value plays who might be a little bit more blowout proof. And you probably want to avoid the Spurs and Memphis game just because it's a blowout risk, as well as the fact that it's easily the lowest scoring probable game of tonight. So we'll go ahead and go down to the players table. I'm going to first sort by likes. The like count is the number of likes that Daily Fantasy Nerd users have assigned. So it's a good way of figuring out potential chalk plays for the day. This is a feature that's available for premium users. And it's a great way to kind of figure out who people like today. Another thing I like to do to start off is sorting by value. This is Daily Fantasy Nerd's bang for buck that figure, or it's calculated by essentially taking fantasy points divided by thousand for each thousands of dollars. Typically for cash games, you want to try to target 5 to 6x, and for GPPs, you want to try to go above 6x. So you can see that there's actually a ton of 5.5x and above value today, which from a lineup construction standpoint makes it more interesting in terms of how you want to select your top salaried players to kind of counterbalance that. If you actually do sort by salary today, you'll actually see that there's fewer players above $10,000 or even above $9,000 than there ordinarily are. So it'll be an interesting approach to figure out how do you balance, these top salary players with the excess amount of value, which usually means you won't be able to play all of these value plays today, so you kind of have to pick and choose which one you want. We'll go ahead and get started by looking position by position and analyzing who I like at each position today. If we actually first filter by Dallas, we'll see that there's actually a strong reason why a lot of these guys will be consistently showing up as top value plays, and it's because Chandler Parsons, as well as Darren Williams and Dirk are out. Dirk and Darren are being rested, probably because they pretty much know that the Warriors are going to blow them out, and Parsons has been injured. So a lot of those minutes are going to go to the normal backups, which creates a lot of value opportunity today. So if we go back to point guard and sort by value. So in terms of point guards today, I really like Barea. He's getting a lot of those minutes that Darren Williams is leaving behind. We have him projected at 34 minutes. He has a favorable DVP matchup against Steph Curry. And most likely, the Dallas team's probably going to go maybe 3 or even 4 guards at once. There's been a lot of teams that have been going with 4 guard lineups against the Warriors lately. And that's something that I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas does. So his minutes are going to be really reliable. And so if we actually go into his game log, we can see last time out against the Warriors, he did well. His fantasy point average against the Warriors has been pretty strong. And if he breaches that 25 to maybe even 30-minute mark, if it's a closer game, he has 7x or above upside. So I'm going to go ahead and lock in Barea. I also really like Felton for the same reason. He's getting a lot more minutes, good DVP matchup. And I also like Augustine. Augustine's been playing well as of late. You can see his last 5 fantasy point average here. He's been getting a lot more minutes than his season average, and he's been taking a good amount more shots than his season average. The defensive efficiency of the Lakers is the worst in the league. He has a favorable DVP matchup. It's a decently high-scoring game, and he's been, if we go into his game log, he's been playing well. Last time out against the Lakers, he pretty much dominated them. That might even have been his season high was in fantasy points scored, and his average against them has been really strong. So I also really like Augustine. Another player I like a lot is Rondo in a very high scoring game with a favorable DVP. His usage rate is strong and he's been taking up more shots lately. Part of that is because uh, DeMarcus Cousins was out, but in a high scoring game, in pretty much what you should expect should be a shootout, I'd expect Rondo to do quite well. Let's go on to the shooting guard position. Um, there's less value plays here than at the point guard position. I do like Devin Booker. Decently high scoring game, 107 points scored. Very favorable defensive matchup, and he's been taking a lot of shots lately. He's been getting a lot more minutes, and his last 5 average is really good. If we dive into his game log, very, very strong play. And also, I keep on saying this, against the Kings, they're the worst in the league at guarding three-pointers, and shooting guards are the perfect position to take advantage of that. So I'm going to go ahead and like Devin Booker today. I also really like James Harden, just because we talked about all of the value plays. If we actually go to our top projected players of today, you pretty much are going to need at least one, maybe two of these kind of players above $8,000 to go into your lineup. And I really like James Harden, mostly because Houston is on the bubble for the playoffs right now. I think they're tied in the 8th spot with Utah. Um, and so Houston pretty much has been like playing Harden into the ground. Like I would not be surprised at all if he's playing 40 minutes. He played 42 minutes against Toronto last time out. He's done well against them in the past. And they're going to need to ride him hard for them to make the playoffs. And when you think about him playing, 40, maybe 42 minutes compared to, some of these other guys that are playing 35 minutes or below, Harden just starts to look really good when compared with the other top tier players of today. So I'm going to go ahead and like him. Let's move on to small forward. Decent number of value options here, but less long-term options here when you compare it to the other positions. So I'm not like as excited about the small forward position, so you probably want to look for more value. I do like PJ Tucker. He's playing against the Kings, who are poor defensively. He's been taking a lot more field goal attempts lately, and he's been getting a lot more minutes. His last 5 average has been really strong, and he's playing against the Kings. So if we dive in, you can see he has that kind of 7x, even 10x plus potential value, and 5x is a pretty decent floor for him. So I'm going to go ahead and lock him in. I'm not going to like anybody else at the small forward position just because not too many people stand out. Kyle Anderson's an intriguing option because the Spurs are resting some guys. But this is going to be a low scoring affair, and he's been kind of inconsistent. So even if he does get like 20 minutes, he's not guaranteed to produce. He's someone I would consider for GPPs, maybe for cash if you really want to pay up for like 2, maybe even 3 of the top tier players, but I wouldn't say he's a must play. At the power forward position, we have a ton of value here. If you actually compare just the number of guys above 5.5x value compared with small forward, you can definitely see that power forward has a surplus of value today. And at this position, I do really like John Lear. With Tyson Chandler out, he's been getting a ton of minutes and he's been producing at a ridiculous rate. He also has a favorable matchup against the Kings. He's been taking a lot more shots. You can see those minutes here. So I'm going to lock in John Lear. I also really like David Lee. With Dirk and some of those guys and Parsons out, he is going to get a lot more minutes, and his per minute production is just really strong. And you can see last time out against the Warriors, he did really well. These games I would kind of gloss over just because I expect him to get at least 25 minutes today, if not our targeted 30 minutes. So he should be in line for pretty solid production level. If we go back to Dallas and sort by usage, you can see that with Dirk out, David Lee should get a good amount of pickup on the usage rate. Same with JJ Barea. So I would expect those two guys to do a lot of the heavy lifting on the offensive side. So I really like David Lee as well. So those would probably be my top two power forwards. But you can also consider Darrell Arthur and Mirza. Darrell Arthur looks good with some injuries there with Gallinari out. Farid's been questionable. So he's been starting and getting a decent amount of minutes. And Mirza with Tyson Chandler out also looks pretty good, especially with that favorable matchup. David West is also a possibility here with Duncan, or excuse me, Diao out. And they're pretty much resting Duncan, so he's going to get more consistent minutes here as well. But I would just be wary about this game in general, just because of the Vegas odds here. Okay, so I'm gonna like David Lee here, and then at the center position, Salah Mejri, the new emerging starting center for Dallas, looks really good. He's been getting a lot of minutes, and with all of the guys resting today, he's probably going to get a lot of playing times, even in the event of a blowout here. My guess is they're going to be trying to develop Mejri more and seeing if he's going to be reliable in terms of when they enter the playoffs. So he's easily my top center pick of the day. You may also want to consider some more of the expensive plays, like Drummond. He's inconsistent, but always someone to consider for GPP because of his high ceiling. Boogie, in a high-scoring affair, he has pretty much one of the highest usage rates in the league. He's always a play to consider, and Towns has been playing very well as of late. So I would take a look at him as well. So given that core of players, let's take a look at what the optimal lineup spits out as a result of this analysis. You can see that the total salary came out much lower than the salary cap, and that's because there's so much value today, and because of the players that I locked in. So I'm going to need to do some further tweaking to see how I can balance out that value with getting as close to the salary cap as possible. Typically, I can recommend getting within 1% of the salary cap for cash games. For GPPs, you can go a little bit larger than that just because you can differentiate your lineup more. But this is a good kind of starting point for where I'm looking at. I'll probably need to adjust it a little bit further. Maybe consider going for a more expensive spot at center, or taking a look at some of the more expensive top tier players and locking one of them in to balance out all the value there. I hope you found this analysis useful. If you haven't had a chance, you can sign up for Daily Fantasy Nerd for free by going to dailyfantasynerd.com and clicking Get Started Free. Good luck!